So let's proceed to the volume of a solid of revolution. So from the topic of area, so we now proceed to so we level up to the volume. So area and the centroid, so we know how to solve area and centroid of your plane region. So this time is we're going to venture into the volume. Okay, so the volume of a solid of revolution, so it's a solid generated by um, a plane region rotated about a fixed line or a fixed axis, and this fixed line or axis is called the axis of the solid of revolution. So most likely what we will encounter in our examples later on, our axis of rotation will be most likely the x and the y axis. And there are other problems, so advanced problems or difficult problems, wherein the axis of revolution is away from the x and y axis. So for example, the axis of rotation may be at x equals 1 or y equals to 4, so depending on the problem. Okay, so imagine that, for example, so this is your x and y plane to give you an idea. So for example, you are going to rotate a rectangle about the x-axis. So it will create a cylinder, di ba? So murag mo na siya ang aim nato for this topic. So from one area, from a rectangular area, then rotated 360 degrees about a certain axis, so it will create a cylinder. So that's the idea behind this topic. So we are rotating areas about a fixed axis or a fixed line, and that area will create a volume. Okay, so for example, we consider this straight line, y equals 3x, and the x-axis, and then x equals 1. So x equals 1 is this line here, then the x-axis, and then this line here, the blue line. So meaning the area to be rotated is this green area. Okay, so if we rotate it about the 360 degrees in the x-axis, so we observe that a volume is generated. Diba? So ang create niyang volume is a cone. Diba? So if we try to draw this one, we try to rotate this one, so most likely ang iyang ma-generate na volume is a cone, di ba? So muna na siya ang idea. Okay, so notice also that in the lower figure, so notice that there's a differential disk, or let's say area. So since we have utilized the vertical strip and the horizontal strip in the area, so in the volume is we will still be utilizing those concept, the vertical and horizontal strip, but your vertical and horizontal strip are the ones being rotated. Murag siya ang atong analyze for us to be able to know which particular concept we're going to use: method of disk, method of washer, or method of cylinders. So muna siya. So vertical strip, then going towards the vertical strip other version, because it will lead to a volume. So method of disk and washer na siya. Okay, so of course, if we rotate a circle, so let's say the circle is away from the x-axis, and then rotate it about 360 degrees. So notice that it will create a donut, diba? Or a torus. So I think you need to be more imaginative in this topic because since you're rotating plane areas, so dapat maka-imagine mo sa output sa volume. Or you can imagine what the volume looks like upon rotating the area. Okay? So, ambot lang if mo play ni siya. So, let's try if mo play ba ni siya. Okay. So, that's how the area so from the area then rotated about 360 degrees. So, it will create the volume. So, that's the idea in this topic. So, starting from area, and then as we analyze the volume, so we're going to be getting the strip, the vertical strip or the horizontal strip, and then upon rotation of your strip, it will create the disc. So marag mo na siya ang idea for this topic. So another example, so rotating about the y-axis, so meaning is rotating horizontally. And you're going to have a horizontal disc coming from the horizontal strip. So upon rotation of your horizontal strip, it will create a horizontal disc. So we'll discuss later how we're going to solve your volume. Okay, so thank you sa Juan. Okay, so another one. So let's try to figure out again if so let's see if maplayan is siya. So notice that this is the area being generated and this is the disk that we're going to utilize. So notice again that the disk is consistent all throughout your volume. So it's not changing from left to right, diba? So another example. So again, notice that if you move the disk, so it's uniform all throughout from top to bottom. So another example. So this time, as you notice in this example, so it's a washer, marag tingga siya. There's a hole in the middle because again your area is not touching the x-axis. So another area, so area rotated on this certain line here. And if it's rotated away from the y-axis, so you notice also the area being generated. So there's a hole in the middle. Lungag. So notice also on the left portion that your strip is consistent, diba, on this area here. So take note of the area here, the pita. So notice the strip that is being utilized. So it's consistent all throughout your region. Okay, so I hope that you got the idea on this topic. So for our formulas, so let's start off with the method of disk. So for method of disk is these are the volumes that are generated if your area is within the axis. within a certain axis, within the axis. So meaning, if we're going to analyze the vertical and horizontal strip, so the y bottom in the horizontal strip is 0, and then the x left in the the horizontal strip is 0. So vertical strip, the y bottom is 0. In the horizontal strip, the x left is 0. So that's why if we're going to derive the formula, so notice that area is, the volume is area times the thickness, and our thickness is coming from your vertical strip. So notice that we start off with the differential volume, because again, our differential volume is the disk. So that will be the area. So on top of the disk, it's pretty much easy to determine the area on top of the disk, because it's just the circle, area of the circle, pi r squared. And then your differential height is that is your width coming from your vertical strip. So if you try to determine the vertical strip, the horizontal strip here. So let's say this is the center, and this is the axis of symmetry, or the axis of rotation. So notice that this one is dx, dy, and then this will be the radius. So this is y top, x right, then this will be the x left. So in vertical strip, so let's say this is your vertical strip here. And then again, ang difference method of disk from the method of washer is that the axis of rotation, or your plane area, is coinciding one of the axis. And you can verify that one through your vertical or horizontal strip. If one end of the strip is touching one certain axis. So for example, in this discussion, di ba? So the vertical strip, the bottom part is touching the axis of rotation. So meaning your y top is a certain value, but your y bottom is equal to 0, and this is the radius again, and then this is your dx. So pi r squared, so pi r squared dh. So we know that your radius is just the distance of the radius, that will be x right minus x left. And for the vertical strip, that will be y top minus y bottom. So this one is y top minus y bottom. And again, since your y bottom is 0, so that's why it's just y top squared. So for your horizontal strip or horizontal disk, so this is coming from x right minus x left squared. And again, notice that your left portion of your horizontal strip is touching the axis of rotation. So meaning it will become 0, and what is left in the equation is just x right squared. So notice that we still utilize the concept of your vertical and horizontal strip, but it's applied differently in this topic. So that's how you solve for the method of disk. So again, this is the area or the strip that you analyzed is within the axis. So this is within the axis. So this one is the method of washer is away from the axis, because it will generate a hole upon rotating the area away from the axis of rotation. So washer, di ba? I think you know what a washer is. So if magtakyan mo, so mga siyang tingga, di ba? Or if you have seen bolt connections, so I think before the bolt is applied, so there's a washer, kanang mga tingga. So muna siyang washer. Okay, so in this case, so again, since we're going to have a hole in your disc, so that's why it's now a washer. So we're still going to utilize the horizontal and vertical strip. But so for example, this is the center. So if you're going to draw your vertical or horizontal strip, so notice that this portion here is longang, di ba? So what is your vertical strip? I mean horizontal strip here is kanira siya ang yung vertical, I mean horizontal strip. No, vertical man dyan. And then for vertical strip is, so from the center, the only thing that you're going to consider here is from this portion going to this portion. Now since this is the radius, di ba? This is the radius. This one is the inner radius. This one is the outer radius. And I think from geometry before, if you try to solve for the area of the ring, so what we'll be using is we're going to getting the area first on the bigger circle minus the circle, I mean the area of the inner circle to get ba, I think ano sa inyo hang elementary siguro or high school, di ba? If we're going to solve for the area of the ring, so what we try to do before in our high school is we try first to get the area of the outer ring and then minus the area of the inner ring. So outer minus inner, and that will be pi r outer squared minus pi r inner squared, and that is what you're looking at in the formula here. Diba? It's a bit similar to the topic before sa inyong high school. Okay, so again, dh is the height of the differential disk. So again, volume, the other format for volume is area times the width. That's why it's area times the differential height or the width. So mara na siya sa cylinder gani, di ba? So the formula for cylinder is pi r squared h, di ba? So that will be the area times the height. So that's why it's pi r squared h, because this one is pi r squared. The top one is the circle times the height. So marag mo na siya ang idea sa kaniyang formula. So breaking down your formulas even further, so if you're going to utilize the vertical strip, so you're going to have this format. So this time is your y bottom is not equal to 0 anymore, because again, this will represent the inner circle or the inner portion of the washer, and then the y top will represent the whole disk. So the outer minus the inner will result to the washer. So if you're going to have it in the horizontal aspect, so this is the formula as well. So murag C0 kasi kay, I think again the problem here is that when you're going to solve these problems later on, isang pag-graph ra jud, because utilizing the formula and then getting the result of the formula is easy because you can now use your calculator. Okay, so any questions so far for this? Any questions at this point or clarifications for the sa top left kay kung ano? Saman sa top left. Ay sa ko is mura na siya ako ang kuan, ako ang pag-understand. So x left is always inner. So if I try to draw the horizontal strip this direction, so x right yapon, then x left. Okay, since we are rotating, so mag-rotate man siya dito, di ba? So meaning ana siya dire x right, x left, then dire kay x right, x left, di ba? So since we are rotating, so muna x right, x left. So for method of disk, so the inner portion will always be 0. So the y bottom will be 0. The x left will be 0 always. So we're going to see why it's 0 because if we're going to analyze your vertical strip and horizontal strip later, so since it's touching the axis, the y and x axis, so muna siya ma-0 siya. Ito na siya makita in the example. Okay, so let's try to go to this problem. So find the volume of the solid of revolution obtained by revolving the plane region R bounded by y equals square root of x, the x-axis, and the line x equals 4. So again, I'm just going to skip the graphing portion. I'm going to leave the graphing portion to you. But again, take note that you have to provide solutions and steps or calculations or whatever in order to obtain your different points in your graph. So different points as well as your points of intersection. So for example, this is the blue line is y equals square root of x. And then the green line is x equals 4. And then this red line here is the x-axis. So the region bounded is this portion here. This is the area to be rotated. Okay. So since we're going to rotate in the x-axis, so it's best that we're going to use the vertical strip. So most likely in the method of disk, the strip that you're going to use is perpendicular to the axis of rotation. So the strip is perpendicular to the axis of rotation. So that's what you need to remember. So in this case, since we are rotating about the x-axis as stated in the problem, so we are rotating in the x-axis. So our perpendicular strip about the x-axis is the vertical strip. So this is the vertical strip here. So again, upon rotation of your vertical strip, so instead of rotating the whole figure, so we can rotate just the horizontal strip first, the vertical strip. So again, it will create a disk. So pasensya sa drawing, kay lisod kay drawing sa kon. So for example, this is your vertical disk, and then the 3D version of this one is kanishana. So pwede rin ninyo i-kuha na, di rin siya kutob, kay di mo ninyo ang x equals 4. So that will be the volume generated. Okay. So again, by formula of the vertical strip, so since we are utilizing the vertical strip, that will be pi. So again, if we try to derive the formula, so para makita ninyo wang ano 0 ang left portion or ang bottom portion. So again, differential volume is equal to pi r squared differential height. And then our radius, so differential volume is equal to pi then times y top minus y bottom squared. And then dh. So getting the integral, so this becomes pi. So taking the constant outside, and this becomes x1 to x2, and then y top minus y bottom squared dx. So again, notice that the bottom portion is touching the x-axis. So as you can see here, the bottom part is equal to 0. So meaning this one is 0. So that's why in the formula, it's always presented as x1 to x2, and then y top squared dx. So mo to pirmi sa formula, di ba? So you can now solve your volume. So pi, then from 0 to 4, the x limits. So from 0 to 4, and then again, in terms of y top, so that will be the blue graph. So expressed in y equals x something, so that will be y equals square root of x. So this one is square root of x squared dx. And then again, you can now use your calculator. So of course, you can help your calculator a bit. So pwede niyo siya i-pi 0 to 4 and then x na lang, di ba? X dx kay square root of x squared is just x. Okay, so the answer is 8 pi, or that will be in decimal or in numerical value 23.13 at 25.13 cubic units. So this is your answer. So sayo na kayo, no? So this is the volume generated. So kani siya kay kuan na ni siya. Ako rin naghimo ani sa kuan. So din siya makita sa Desmos ang pag-generate sa volume. And then this is the answer. Okay, so questions or clarifications? Okay, so I think there's no questions yet. Okay, sisiyo pa kayo, no? Okay, so let's go to another problem. So let's try a horizontal strip nga disk. So for example, you are given the curve y equals x cubed. So this is the red graph. So the y-axis is the green graph. So I hope that you can see the green graph. It's in the y-axis. So most likely the y-axis is, in terms of equation, that will be x equals 0. And then the line y equals 3, the blue graph. So muna siya dire. So again, as what I told you earlier, the strip that you're going to use should be perpendicular to the axis of rotation. So since we're going to rotate about the y-axis, so what we're going to use as the strip to analyze is again perpendicular to y-axis, which is the horizontal strip. Okay, so again this one is perpendicular to the axis of rotation. So this will be our x right, this will be our x left. Okay, so again by formula, so if you don't want to derive the equation, so you can use directly the formula presented. So that will be x right squared dy from y1 to y2. So this is pi, and then the y limits is from 0 going to 3. So 0 to 3. Then x right is this one, x right is y equals x cubed, and we should convert it in terms of x equals y something. So x equals cube root of y. So don't forget ODI to draw the figure. So dapat inyo siyang i-drawing. Okay, para murag legit po lang inyo pag-solve sa inyong answers. So for example, this is the disk. Then this is the volume. So mura siya og mura ka nang sudanlan sa milk tea, di ba? Inana siya ang volume ninyo. So from 0 to 3, and then this one is cube root of y squared and then dy. So again, in your calculator, it's not going to accept y variables, but the default variable for this one is x. So upon inputting in the calculator, this one is alpha x squared and then dx. So this is going to be your volume. So don't forget the pi outside the integral symbol. Okay. Muna usually ang marong sa akong students before kay di nila i-plug in ang pi nga variable. So as you notice, if you are using your calculator right now, so it's taking a bit of a time to solve the equation because again, it's dealing with a radical expression. Muna medyo dugay-dugay siya mohatag og answer. Okay, so the answer is 11.76. So ano ko nihuwat sa akong calculator kay dugay kayo. Basta 11.76 ang answer. So basin mas paspas pa mag-integrate manually than to wait for the calculator, di ba? So up until now, again po yung answer ang calculator. Okay, so questions. So clear as the sky pa ang understanding. Okay, so usually what I do is, for example, I'm waiting for the answer in my calculator. So while waiting, so I'm going to solve the next problem asad. So muna siya. That's how I utilize my time in the exams before. So sometimes nag-wait pa sa calculator to give me the answer. So I'm going to start off answering the next question. So mura karon pa ni gawas ang answer. So it's 11.76. So 11.76 then cubic units because we are now in the volume. Okay, so let's go to the washer now because super simple kay ang disk. So we're going to find the volume of the solid generated by revolving the region bounded by the parabola y equals x squared and y squared equals 8x. So meaning these two are parabolas. These two equations are parabolas. Then it's going to be rotated about the x-axis. So x-axis. So again, this will be the graph. And again, you're going to provide solutions for your graph. And as well as the points of intersection. So labi na kaniyo. So you have to provide how you got to 4 as the points of intersection. As well as kaning 0, 0. Okay, so the washer is more likely the same as the disc. So meaning you're going to use the strip that will be perpendicular to the axis of rotation. So since again we're going to rotate in the x-axis, so the axis of rotation prior to the strip that we're going to use is vertical, diba? So meaning we're going to use the vertical strip because it's perpendicular to the axis of rotation. So notice that if you're going to rotate your strip about the x-axis, so murag na siya lungag, diba? So this is the hole here, diba? Then this will be the volume, diba? So mo siyang tingga jud. Lang basa kay mag di naman siya masulod sa kuan. Okay? So y top is this portion here, the blue graph. Y bottom is the red graph. Okay? So this is the red graph. This is the blue graph. So this becomes y top equals x squared. This becomes y bottom squared equals 8x. Then further simplifying this portion, this becomes y bottom equals square root of 8x. Okay, so your y top becomes the outer radius. The y bottom becomes the inner radius. So again, the concept behind the washer is that you're just more likely solving the area of the ring. So outer circle minus, so this one is the outer circle minus the inner circle. So bali mo na siya ang concept behind this concept. Okay, so again, if you know the formula already, so automatically dito na ta. So since we're utilizing the vertical strip, so this is x1 to x2, and then y top squared, that will be the outer radius, minus y bottom squared dx. So again, the x limits of this one is from 0 going to 2. So from 0 to 2, so diba, we know what limits we're going to use because beforehand, upon graphing and solving the points of intersection, so we can know, on that portion what limits we're going to use. So muna in the exam, if you came up with the limits of integration and you have no sufficient evidence showing in the graph, di ba, on how you come up with the points of intersection, so muna siya, marag invalid kaya siya paminahon, di ba? Marag magic siya, magic kalit. Okay, so y top is x squared and then squared pa jud minus y bottom, that will be square root of 8x squared and then dx. So if you want to plug this one in your calculator, so of course I think medyo dugay-dugay po ang pag-solve on this calculator because there's a radical expression on the second term. So sa kuang button is ako siyang i-simplify daan. So from 0 to 2, this will be x to the power 4 and then minus 8x. Then this is the time that I'm going to integrate. Okay, para mas dali mong gawas ang answer. So if di mo confident, okay, mo lagi hasta 1 plus 1, di ba? Auto may calculator. So if di mo confident on simplifying the equation first, then plugging in the calculator. So kanila inyo plug in ninyo para sure. But again, you have to have patience in waiting for the answer kay medyo dugay-dugay siya mohatag sa value. So ako na siyang inyong tip na siya nako ninyo para mas dali mong gawas ang answer. Okay, again, if the calculator is dealing with a radical expression, so medyo dugay-dugay ang paggawa sa answer. Alright, so questions so far? Kung tanaw na if sakto ba itong answer. So if ang tables kay if inyong makuan, if inyong matry o determine sa table nga muna siyang points of intersection. Okay, matugma man na sa value sa yung tables, di ba? So pwede ra po siya sa kuan basta as long as inyo siyang ma-determine sa table sa dana. Hoy! Okay, so kung answer kay ano man yung answer negative man siya. Sakto akong answer but negative siya. Sakto day. So, muna negative siya kay bali day. Okay, mo din ang white top is the blue graph. Nga ako siyang y bottom dire. So, ang sakto day is kani day. Pi, then from 0 to 2, then the first term should be square root of 8x day. 8x squared minus x squared squared and then dx. So mo day negative siya kaya ako nabali ang ako. So this will be 8x and then minus x to the power of 4 dx. So sakto tong 30.16 but it should be positive. So 48 pi over 5 or 30.16 cubic units. So bali ana siya pag so kani siya is-type din siya kaya ako nabali ang y top and y bottom. Two decimal place lang yapon. So nabalin ako ang y top and y bottom. So again, in providing solutions for your graph, so pili itong tabular method. And then also you can use the table the table of values to determine the points of intersection. So ang problem lang siguro ana is that na yung mga equations wherein for example ang iyahang mga points of intersection kay naa sa 1/2, di ba, or naa sa mga in between sa numbers inyo, and let's say ang inyong i-declare sa inyong calculator kay ang inyong steps kay 1 lang, di ba, 0 1 2 3 4. And what if the points of intersection is at 3/2, so mag-dili siya ma-detect sa calculator, di ba? So muna you need to equate the equations jud. So equating the equations to solve the points of intersection. So ang pasabotan ng equating the equations is that kanis lang duha, di ba? Kanin duha is inyong i-equate. So y equals x squared against y squared equals 8x. Ano? So muna akong pasabot na ko. So probably you may plug in this one here, di ba? Y equals so may mo siyang x squared squared, di ba? Equals 8x, then this one is x to the power of 4 minus 8x equals 0. We're going to have x then x cubed minus 8 equals 0. So ana siya, di ba? So the first value is x equals 0, and then the other one is x cubed equals 8, then the cube root of 8 is 2. So the second value of x is 0 is 2, di ba? 0 and 2. 0 and 2. Then of course you're going to replace the value of x in the equation, and then as well as the value of the other x in the equation to get the counterpart or the partner of that x value. So x and y man sila, di ba? So na pili po niya ni siya kani equating coefficients, kaya I think mas better ni siya in solving the points of intersection. So pili po tong table, but para nako there are instances nga pasin maglisod ko og predict sa kuan, pero pasin sayo na po tong table kay as far as the exam is going, so medyo sayo na ang mga problems nga gihatag sa EM coordinator. Okay, so ano siya ang solution? So iba char kay ang kuan, iba char kay ang drawing, pero malagi hindi ka abot sa kuan sa papel nato. Nagkapuliki ng agi, di ba? So just try to create a better graph or a good graph in your kuan. So ignore lang yung purple dire kay wala siya labot. Ambot nga apil ni siya. Kasi kalimut kog erase ani. So na siya labot sa figure. Okay, so for example, the axis of rotation is away from the x-axis. So notice that nihaw mo yung area sa y-axis, but the axis of rotation is at x equals -1. So meaning direta, di ba? Direta mo rotate. So kani siya medyo tricky na ni siya. So if we try to if ato na siyang lungagan dire, so we'll create a hole here in the disk. Basta mo na siya ang disk, di ba? Sa makasabot lang. Dire kay lungag po nila sa babaw. Dire kay lungag po sa ilang. Basaan na siya, di ba? Okay, so this one is a bit tricky because again, our axis of rotation is from x equals -1. So going towards the x right and x left, so this will be our x right, the red graph. Then our x left will be the y-axis. So from this portion here, diba, since this is our axis of rotation, that is x equals -1. So again, since we're going to measure outer and inner radius, so from this point, going towards the outer radius, xr, diba? This one is xr from the y-axis. This one is 1 unit to the left of the y-axis, to the axis of symmetry. So meaning our outer radius is 1 plus xr. Diba? Sakto ra ba? Sakto ra ba yung understanding ani? Since we are measuring our axis of rotation at x equals 1, diba? And again, our concept is radius. So from this point, going towards, let's say, the inner radius, this one is the inner radius. So the distance is 1. So inner radius is equal to 1. Okay, it's going towards the y-axis man. Gets ra? So meaning our inner radius, so let's say this one is our inner radius, then plus touching put each other the x left. Let's say it's x left. So notice our x left is 0 because it's the y-axis, that is x equals 0. So this one is x equals 0. xr is, on the other hand, is square root of 4 minus y squared. So again, in understanding the formula, so this is pi. Then again, we are in the horizontal strip. So that will be from -2 to 2. So -2 to 2. And then outer radius first, that will be 1 plus the square root of 4 minus y squared, and then squared, minus 1 plus 0 squared, and then dy. So this will be the volume. So do you have questions ano 1 plus something siya? So again, we're basing our radius from the axis of rotation. So that's why it's 1 plus xr. Then the other one is just 1. So pwede 1 ra ang inner radius, wala na yung x left. So kani siya para nako is di lang ko mag-simplify kay para kay simplify ani. So you can simplify the kuan lang 1 plus 0 squared in the calculator para hindi siya dugay mo kuan. So the answer is 72.99. Pero wala pa na siya nigawa sa calculator. So if you notice the other solution, so let me go to the solution first, given by the resource that I was referring to. So notice that the outer radius for this one is 4 minus y squared minus negative 1. So maragayahang style is, for example, this is the, so again, the green part is the y-axis. So you may also do this one. So a young style is, for example, this is the horizontal strip. And again, coming from the y-axis, this is the xr, di ba? The outer radius. And then moatras siya og negative 1, diba? Going towards the the axis of rotation. So mo gyapon ang labas niya is plus gyapon siya, di ba? So minus 1 is may mo siyang plus 1 gyapon. Minus 1 may mo gyapon siyang plus gyapon. So medyo libog na siya nga pagka-present, basta ako ang point is mo refer lang ko dito. Then I'm going to measure the inner radius first. Then lastly is I'm going to measure the outer radius na para madali akong kinabuhi. Okay, so ang nigawa sa calculator is 72.99. So again, medyo dugay-dugay mo gawas ang answer if you're going to plug in radical expressions. Alright, so do you have questions or clarification so far? Okay, so lastly is we're going to go to the method of shells. So bali, it's an opposite solution for your kanang inyong disk and washer. So if I'm going to explain it in simpler terms, so mura siya katong sa area gani nga topic. So it may be possible that the vertical strip is better in solving the answer compared to the horizontal strip. So murag ani po siya nga point sad. So there are cases wherein it's difficult to solve the volume using the disk method, pero masayon siya in solving using the shells method or the cylindrical shells method. So bali mo na siya ang kuan. So in the cylindrical shell, so it's bounded by two concentric right circular cylinder. So, and then if you're going to cut your cylinder and then ato siyang ilatag, ato siyang i-open up. So it's going to create a rectangular rectangular shape figure. And of course, if you're going to determine the dimensions coming from the cylinder, so the top portion, this portion here is 2 pi r, that's the circumference or the length of the rectangle. And then the height is coming from your radius, the differential radius. So mo siya gikan siya dire. So it will be dx or dy depending on the the orientation of your cylinder. So it may be vertical or horizontal. So the formula is again this one 2 pi r h times the 2 pi r h times delta r. So again, the volume is area times the differential radius, and then length times width times height. So that's why it became length times width times height, because we are now analyzing your cylinder in terms of a rectangle. Diba? So volume for rectangle is length times width times height. So the length is again coming from the top portion of the cylinder. If atoning open up, the length is measured as 2 pi r, which is the circumference of the circle. Kung ato siyang i-refer sa cylinder, so circumference. And then the height, of course, this is the height. Length times width. So the width is the height. And then the height of the rectangle is the differential radius. So this is the differential radius. So if you don't want the derivation, so just memorize these formulas. If you don't want to memorize it. So usually in the method of shells or cylinders, ang iyahang unique pod na discussion ani is earlier our strips are perpendicular to the axis of rotation. For shells, the strips that you're going to use are parallel to the axis of rotation. Parallel to the axis of rotation. So strips are parallel to the axis of rotation. So in this type of method, we're still going to use the horizontal and vertical strip, but this time the strips should be parallel to the axis of rotation. Okay? So let's solve a problem. So let's try to solve the problem earlier from the method of disk. So this is the same problem, but we're going to use the method of shell. So earlier we used the vertical strip in solving the area, but this time we're going to utilize the horizontal strip because again the strip should be parallel to the axis of rotation. So since the axis of rotation is at the x-axis or is in the horizontal axis, so our strip should be horizontal as well. So if you notice that if you're going to rotate this figure, so it will create a shell. Diba? Compared earlier nga disk ang iyang ma-generate for the volume. Basta mo na siya, shell na siya. Yan mo na siya ang atong volume. Okay, so again, if you don't want to derive the formula, but in my case, maraganahan lang ko mo derive, okay, mas dali ko maka-figure out. So 2 pi, so let me derive the equation first. So differential volume, and then again this will be area times the differential height. So in this case, it's the differential radius, diba? So again, our area is coming from the rectangle. So 2 pi r h dr. This will be our differential volume. So notice that our strip is in the rectangular version. So our height is now in this portion, di ba? This will be our height kay since naghigda man nato ang strip. So this will be volume is equal to 2 pi x. And then our height is y top, what's vertical man akong ikuan dai. So 2 pi, so again the radius is just y, di ba? So 2 pi y, and then my height is now x right minus x left, and then my differential radius is dy. Then so again, since I'm in the vertical strip, so horizontal strip, so my limit of integration is in the vertical axis. So that's from 0 to 2. 0 to 2. So again, this becomes 0 to 2, then 2 pi times y, and then x right is equal to 4, and then minus x left, which is the blue graph, which is so this one, if this one is x left, so this becomes y squared is equal to x. So this becomes y squared, and then dy. So nanak ko yung volume. Oops. Saan naman to? Okay, so should be that our answer should be the same as earlier. Dapat 8 pi gapon siya. So the answer is still 8 pi, or 25.13 cubic units. So muna akong giingon ganina nga, again, you can refer this one as the area, katong atong pag-solve sa area. So one strip is better than the other strip. So in this case, so it might be that when you're going to use method of shells, so it may be better to use it compared to the method of disk, or vice versa. So maybe it's better to use the disk, maybe so it could be washer or disk. So depende na siya sa situation. So if you're going to compare this later, so you have to notice that on the method of shell, so we're not dealing with any radical expressions. Then if you go back to the method of disk earlier, so we encountered a radical expression in the equation, which is y equals square root of x. So muna siya. So maglikay-likay lang gamay sa radical expressions, and the method will still give you the same result. So again, the method of shell is just an alternative. For example, magdugay na kayo mo solve ang calculator sa inyong equation because you are dealing with radical expressions. So you may use the method of shell in solving the problem. Yeah. Also, gamit po ng method of shell, for example, ang inyong strip is repeating na gani katayong akong gingon before nga bawal dapat consistent ang x right and x left, di ba? So if mabalik-balik na gani ang region, so that's the time that you're going to use method of shell na pod again. So akong point ana is, for example, sa ito nga mga examples nga na magbalik-balik ang area gani. So for example, muna siya, di ba? Atong kaninga example mo siguro ni. So muna yung parabola, di ba? So if you're going to use, so let's say you're going to rotate about this axis. Ano? So if you're going to use horizontal strip, di ba? So equation of the line, equation of parabola, line, then so okay ra if horizontal strip, di ba? So if vertical strips, yeah, so let's say we're going to rotate, so ako lang usbo na. So let's say this is the parabola, this is the line, and let's say you're going to rotate about the x-axis. So line against parabola, but on the left side, it's parabola against parabola. So you cannot utilize the vertical strip even though it's perpendicular to the axis of rotation, because again, the portion here is repeating, di ba? Parabola against parabola na. Yeah, muna na siya ang time that you're going to use the method of shell. So shell is parallel to the axis of rotation, and notice that the horizontal strip is not repeating. Diba? So parabola against line, so asa pa na siya ako ibutang, parabola against line. So muna siya ang inyong timanan. Alright, so questions or clarifications? So muna siya ang solution. And then I'm going to give you a problem set pod. So I'm going to post it in Canvas for your kani medyo dagan-daghan ni, so 9 and then 10. So dagan-dagan siya. So at least inyo na sa ning practice for the final exam. Alright, so I think that's it for today.